Are you prepping for your TEAS 7 exam and you need a bit of help with the English section? I'm Liz. I'm the reading and English subject matter expert with Smart Edition Academy, and today we've got a really specific study plan to help you out. The number one mistake we see over in our free study group is that a lot of students put all their effort into math and science and they don't even study for the English section. Then sometimes they don't end up getting the minimum points that they need. So we don't want you to make that mistake. We want a really clear plan of action for you to get ready for the test, and it's here in this video. So don't worry about writing down everything that I say in this video. We actually have the study plan available for you as a PDF. So if you sign up to take our free practice test and you provide your email, we'll give you a free copy of the PDF study plan along with access to the practice test. And if you're ready to really ace your TEAS 7, why don't you take a look at our online course? We've got the only TEAS 7 online course with an app and everything in one place to help you get your best score in 2024. So let's get started with the study plan. So our first step here is preparation. So this is before we start our plan. And by the way, this is a plan for 6 weeks. If you'd like a different plan, for example, if you just have 2 weeks to study, so you really need an intensive 2-week study period, or if you have a bit longer, you have 8 weeks to study, we might be able to make a different video. So be sure to comment below. We do really listen to what our students need. Actually, the reason I'm making this video today is because we had so many requests for a specific study plan that broke down all the topics and told you what to study when. So we'd be happy to make another version. Just comment below, what do you think would be the best time period for you? All right, so on to our preparation before our 6 weeks begin. So before the plan begins, prepare a list of the most commonly misspelled words in American English. So you can find these kind of lists online. Try to find a reputable source, a high quality website, and be sure you're looking for American English. This is important because the TEAS 7 is testing American English, and UK English or English from other countries can have different spellings. But when we test spelling on the TEAS 7, we're looking at American spellings. And of course, a test wants to be tricky, so it's possible that they're going to test you on some of these commonly misspelled words. Even the word misspelled is actually commonly misspelled. There's a lot of double letter words that are really tricky, like embarrassed, accommodate, recommend. Those kind of words are really tricky, so they might be ones that you want to study. So find yourself a list. Number 2, find yourself a list of the most common prefixes in American English. Number 3, find a list of the most common suffixes in American English, because the TEAS will test prefixes, suffixes. These also help with vocabulary in general. And then 4, get a specific notebook or document for your ELU learning. So I'm a little old school. I actually like to write things down. And studies do show that if you write things down physically, you're kind of more engaged in it, and you're kind of, the hand-eye coordination, and you might remember things better. But if it's, a Word document, a Google document, whatever kind of document, that's great too. Maybe you can even collaborate with a friend of yours. So get all those things ready, and then we'll start our 6 weeks. All right, so this is at the beginning of the 6 weeks or just before the 6 weeks that we're going to study. We're going to take practice test number 1. Practice tests are super important, and you're going to see in our 6-week study plan, we actually take a few practice tests regularly spaced. This will help you see your progress. This will help you get a handle on which topics are difficult and which are not, and it will give you a lot of practice with the timing. Even if you take a practice test and you get a really bad score, it's actually a good step because you're going to be less nervous when you go into the real thing. Because you've seen the test, you know the types of questions, you know the types of topics that they're addressing, you know about the timing that you're going to need and whether it's a bit fast for you or whether you can slow down. So all these things are going to become so normal to you throughout our study plan that it's going to be so easy when you get to the real test. It's just kind of routine at that point, taking another test. Yeah. So after you take practice test number 1, review the questions you got wrong. In your notebook, write down your 2 most challenging topics on the test. So you might be able to see, all the questions I got wrong, or the majority are about punctuation. I really have to focus when I'm studying punctuation. Or you might say, my vocabulary, I kept seeing these words I didn't know. I need to work on my vocabulary. That's actually related to the next one. Any new words or concepts you have never seen before, write down in your notebook. I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but we really want to focus on things you've never seen before. So, for example, if you have a grammar question about the predicate, we have some information on our website about predicate. That's a grammar topic that's not one of the biggest or a word that we hear a lot in grammar, but sometimes it comes up on certain exams. So that might be something you're taking the test and suddenly you see the word predicate and you're like, "Oh, I know that's some grammar thing, but I haven't seen that in a long time, or I don't remember at all what that is." So these terms you don't recognize that well, put those in the notebook. And of course, any vocabulary, prefixes, suffixes that are really new to you, either you haven't heard them in a really long time or you've never seen them, so you can write those down. And you can tell that as we're going along, we're going to be adding things to this notebook, to this document, to enrich your learning as we go. And of course, we've got our free T7 Practice 1 test available. That's in the link below. So that's a great one to start with. All right, so we're in week 1 now. So how it works, we've decided that based on the kind of topics that are covered by this test and that are on the English section. So remember, we do have an English and a reading section, and those are different. But based on what's on this English, this ELU section, we want you regularly throughout these 6 weeks studying the commonly misspelled words from that list. So we're going to ask you to do 5 a week, learn 5 new ones every week, learn the spelling, memorize that spelling, make sure you know it. Then learn 2 prefixes and find example words. So for example, one that's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, but maybe you've never thought about it. Pre itself. It's in prefix, it's in preview, premiere. Pre means before. So maybe you write that in your notebook if you haven't seen it, and then you say, oh, okay, like a movie preview, or you can say like the pregame show on ESPN. So some examples there will help it stick in your brain. Also suffixes. So maybe this first week, one of the suffixes you find is ism, and you start to think, what ends in is? Oh, communism, oh, fascism, socialism. So basically these are ideologies. These are kind of concepts, ideologies, maybe political schools of thought. So you write down that suffix and those examples if those are new to you. And you start building this list in your notebook, and you're going to see regularly over the weeks that list is going to grow for you until you know more and more prefixes and suffixes. Because these take so much effort to memorize, we don't want you memorizing a huge list of 50 in one go or the day before the test. We'll see that we're actually not doing anything the day before the test, and that's important. We really want you doing this over time, regularly. That's a better way to learn these. And of course, add these to your notebook document. Then we're on the other side of the slide, we have what we think of as our topic of the week. So this week, we're going to look at the writing process and citations. So review the steps of the writing process and when and how to use citations. So here we're starting with writing process. So we made that choice because writing process is fairly straightforward. So it's a little bit of a way to ease into our study plan. It's not the most difficult topic for most students. It's really just something to kind of memorize. So let's look at this example question. Which of the following steps comes after drafting? Is it A, brainstorming, B, outlining, C, proofreading, D, pre-writing? So what we're looking at here is kind of this step of how you write an essay, how you write a paper. Maybe we haven't done this since school, so you do have to memorize again. But of course, brainstorming is an early step. Pre-writing is part of brainstorming and researching. That's also an early step. Then outlining, then drafting, and proofreading is going to be towards the end because we have a pretty finalized or, at least a draft in good shape or an essay in good shape. So we're going to proofread that and look for the smaller errors at the end, not the big changes, but the smaller errors. So proofreading is going to be the step that comes after. So these are really just kind of a step-by-step that you have to review and memorize, and do understand what each step is. But I think a majority of our students do kind of know the idea of what is brainstorming, what is a first draft, what is editing, what is proofreading. So this is kind of a good topic to ease us into week 1. And then of course, citations. We don't have an example here, but when do we need to quote a source or give information about our source? So if we mention something specific, like a specific scientific study, and that's justifying an argument, then that might be something where you need a citation and you need to say the date of the scientific study, the authors, all that. So that's also to review and kind of memorize those rules. All right, let's move on to week 2. We're already moving along. So each week we're going to continue. We're going to do 5 more new words, 2 new prefixes, 2 new suffixes, and we're going to keep growing that list in our notebook or our document. Then on to our topic of the week. So that's going to be sentences and conjunctions. So review types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, clauses, independent, dependent, and how to use conjunctions, connecting words. One of our example questions, one of these topics: although I was late to the interview, I still got the job. What type of sentence is this? Is it simple, compound, complex, compound, complex? So this was something to review. So simple sentence, we're going to have a main subject and verb and not any others. So that doesn't work here because we say I was late, I still got the job. So we have kind of 2 different subject verb combinations going on. Compound sentence. So that's going to be when we have a coordinating conjunction and we say, I like chocolate and I bake pies. Something like that. We have our independent sentences be independent clauses that could be sentences brought together with a coordinating conjunction. So that's not the case here. What we have here is a complex sentence. So complex sentence means we have a dependent clause. Although I was late to the interview, that's a piece of a sentence that can't be a sentence on its own, but it's combined with an independent clause, I still got the job. That could be a sentence on its own. And then if we have a compound complex sentence, so that will have 2 independent clauses and then at least 1 dependent clause. So there's kind of a minimum for compound complex, compound complex. That's something to review for sure. So that's our topic of week 2. So now we're going to take our practice test number 2. So this is about at the end of week 2. So after the test, review the questions we got wrong, of course, write down our 2 most challenging topics for this test. Maybe, for example, the topics you studied in the first 2 weeks are not as challenging anymore. Maybe you had gotten a bunch of questions wrong before about the writing process, brainstorming, editing, but now you're comfortable with that because you studied that in week 1. It's possible. Then write down the words and concepts you have never seen before. Again, so any new things to you that you really say, ooh, I have no idea what that is, those go in the notebook. And then your progress since practice test 1. One thing I will say, I've actually had a fair amount of students throughout my career. They'll actually go down on practice test number 2. The score will go down. That's something that's pretty normal. It's not to be discouraged about. You're kind of in the process of learning and changing the way you think about the test and learning new concepts, but you haven't learned all of them yet. So it could be a place where you're a bit like unsure about the answers. So if your score is even lower, that's not a problem. Probably in the next one, we'll start to see more progress. So if your score goes up, that's great. If it goes down, that does happen. So don't worry about that. Let's go on. So A, Lily's daughter, we have an apostrophe there, is smart, colon, she is a nurse. B, Lily's no apostrophe. His daughter is smart, semicolon, she is a nurse. Lily's apostrophe daughter is smart, semicolon, she is a nurse. And Lily's no apostrophe daughter is smart, comma, she is a nurse. So let's go through and review a little bit of punctuation since that's our topic of the week here. So Lily's daughter, okay, so it's great to have that apostrophe because it's a possessive. We mean the daughter of Lily is smart, colon, she is a nurse. The problem is a colon generally goes before a list of things. So I need to buy the following things at Walmart. Socks, lemonade, meat, apples. I don't know. I could do a long list. It's a bunch of random things that come into my head, but we usually have colon before a list or in other circumstances. It doesn't work here to bring together 2 independent clauses. Next one, we're missing that apostrophe that we need for a possessive. So let's cross out B and let's cross out D too. So actually all we have left is C, but why is C correct? So we have Lily's, that's a possessive. Then we have 2 independent clauses that could potentially stand on their own. They're connected by a semicolon because they're independent clauses that have a relationship between each other. They're relevant to each other. So they have a connection in terms of the topic. So that's why that one is correct. Let's move on to our next week where we're moving along in our study plan. So before we go on to week 4, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So do comment below when you're taking the test. Are you taking it for the first time? Are you taking it again? Do you find study plans helpful? Is there any kind of other resource we could provide that would be helpful for you? How much time did you give yourself to prepare for the English portion of the exam if you did prepare? If you didn't prepare, maybe you can write a little warning to our other students that they do need to prepare. Sometimes we do hear that. So yeah, give us a comment below and maybe you'll meet someone else who's also studying for the test at the same time. So now on to our week 4. So we're more than halfway through. Yes, yes, yes. So we're going to continue our routine. Maybe we're going to have our beautiful Sunday afternoon with our notebook and our beautiful latte. And we're doing our misspelled words, our prefixes, our suffixes. By now you're building up quite a good knowledge of these topics. So that's great. And these are useful in your life and they're useful in the medical field because these are part of a lot of medical words. So you're not wasting your time for sure. You're just expanding your knowledge. And our topic of the week, parts of speech. So review nouns. What is a subject noun, object noun, concrete noun, abstract noun? Pronoun, how is that different from a noun? Verbs, adjectives versus adverbs, how do we use those differently? Prepositions, etc. Our example question here. She kicked the soccer ball so hard that she broke her foot. What are the parts of speech of the underlined words? So we have so and hard underlined. I'm actually going to look at hard first and say, what is that describing? Oh, that's how she kicked the soccer ball. So it's describing a verb. Describing word for a verb is called an adverb. Okay, so our second one is going to be adverb. I did it in reverse and you'll see why. What is so describing? So is describing the adverb hard. Okay, so what's a word that describes an adverb? It's actually called an adverb. An adverb describes an adverb. It's kind of like an adverb squared or adverb sandwich, or I don't know. But it's kind of an unusual thing, but we do have here adverb, adverb. So we're going to go with letter C there as our choice. So if you don't remember adverb, adjective, what's the difference? This is going to be a week where you really want to focus on those parts of speech. So we're on to practice test number 3. As always, we're going to review what we got wrong. We're going to look at what are the big topics that we're still lacking. Maybe it's the topics we're about to address in the next 2 weeks. It could be that. Hopefully you've made some progress on the topics we've already studied. So that might have changed what's challenging and not for you. Again, we're going to write down new concepts. It's possible that you might still be seeing new concepts along the way. So you might still be seeing, for example, something like peer editing. That's part of the writing process. Hopefully you studied it as part of the writing process, but that's kind of, a smaller niche topic within a topic that might come up, or something, like the simple subject. We sometimes hear that term, the simple subject. So how is that different from just subject? How is that different from the simple predicate? So if you see something like that, write it down. And of course, try to find some information about it or go back if you haven't studied it yet. And of course, you're going to see your progress since the last practice test. So here, I believe many students will be seeing progress. So I think if you're following this study plan pretty carefully and you're putting in that time, I think you're going to see some progress by this time. Maybe the last practice test you didn't see progress, but now we've covered a fair amount of topics and you might see your score going up, which is great. I think you'll also be getting used to the timing of the test and you'll know kind of the approach that works for you and how long do you take to read the question carefully and eliminate answers, all of that. And of course, get more TEAS practice tests, study plans, and study videos, and the TEAS 7 online course. So a little reminder about that. We have so many resources for you. So you can pair this study plan from our video with all the content we have as part of this course because we have these explanations. What is predicate? What is a subject noun? What is a pronoun? How to use a semicolon? We have pretty detailed information about all of that on our site. Okay, so here we are on week 5 of our study plan. We're definitely moving along. We're going to continue. Hopefully now you're in your routine of learning the prefixes, suffixes, and the spelling, the controversial spellings. Hopefully these aren't really, really difficult words. I don't think it's worth, trying to be in a spelling bee unless that's part of your plan. But, we're going to stick to that list of commonly misspelled words. And our topic of the week. So week 5, we're going to look at verb tenses and subject-verb agreement. So review verb tenses, past simple, Past progressive, so past simple is something like I went. Past progressive, I was going. Present perfect, I have been a teacher for 10 years. And conjugating verbs for the correct subject. So that's really how you match when we talk about subject verb agreement. It's the reason we say she is instead of she am. It's basically a kind of conjugation as well. Sometimes it can be tricky to figure out what the subject is. So you could say, for example, the team of players is super strong. I don't know, something like that. And it sounds a bit strange because players is next to is. Shouldn't it be players are? But the subject is team. So team needs to agree with is. And so it can be a little tricky. Sometimes they'll put a few words between the subject and verb so you can't make them agree, or it's a little harder to make them agree because you're not sure what's the subject. That's where things can get a little tricky. So that's something to review in week 5. So example question for this one, I blank yesterday when I twisted my ankle. Which best completes the sentence? I ran yesterday when I twisted my ankle. I run yesterday when I twisted my ankle. I was running yesterday when I twisted my ankle, or I have run yesterday when I twisted my ankle. Well, I ran when I twisted my ankle kind of makes it sound like I twisted my ankle and then I took off running. I ran when, well, that doesn't make sense because I just hurt my ankle. No. Run, I run yesterday. Well, run is the present or a routine. It's the present simple. So we can use it for a routine like I run every day, something like that. We don't do I run yesterday. That doesn't sound right because yesterday is the past. I was running yesterday when I twisted my ankle. So great. So here we see the past progressive, this action over a period of time. I was running through the park, past the trees. I twisted my ankle is in past simple. So we often see those two paired together, the longer action and the past simple interrupting. I have run yesterday. Well, we don't use, this is called the present perfect. We don't use it with the past. It's called present perfect because it goes up to the present. I have been a teacher. That's continuing to the present. I'm still teaching right now on this video. So I won't say I have been a teacher yesterday. No. So we're going to go with C. All right, so we're on to our last week of studying. So by now you've learned so much. And if you get to this point in the plan, I'm super, super proud of you. And I think you've learned a lot of important things. Of course, this week we're going to finish up those big lists in our notebook of the words that we know how to spell correctly, even though they're challenging, the prefixes and the suffixes and the examples of them. So maybe you found words like, post-war, something like that, and you learn that post means after, or post-mortem, and you have those words in your notebook, they mean after, something like that. Week 6 is a little bit of like a grab bag. So the topics left in the ELU, there were some of them that were quite straightforward because you just kind of memorize them. There were others that we feel can be common sense for a lot of students. So what we decided to do is give you some questions so you can choose what to focus on. You could choose all of them if you have time in week 6. You could choose 2 or 3 if one is easy, but the others you feel you have to review. So let's go through these questions, see which one kind of sounds like, ooh, I don't remember that, and then you can focus on that. So tone, how would you describe the tone of it was a dark and stormy night? So if you haven't talked about tone in a while, tone is the author's word choice. So in this case, the author is choosing words like dark, stormy, night. So I might say this tone is scary, or this tone is ominous. It makes me feel like something bad is going to happen, or this tone is mysterious. So the author chooses words or images or language to make me feel this way. So it is important to note that tone is different than mood. So while you study tone, you might also study mood. So mood is the reader's feeling, and then tone is what the author chooses in terms of word choice, verb choice. If the author uses verbs like killed, smashed, grabbed, that's kind of a dynamic or a violent or an aggressive tone. So it's more about the author's word choice on the author side, or the word choice of the person, because the test might ask you, oh, what is the character's tone instead of the author's tone? So be careful whose tone you're talking about. Next, a question about graphics. So do you remember graphics? Do you remember this? What is the difference between a flowchart and a pie chart? This we put in the grab bag of different topics because it's pretty easy to review these. We have some stuff on our website. You can review these different places. It's pretty easy to review. It's not as complicated to understand as the parts of a sentence or, putting sentences together with semicolons. This is a bit more straightforward memorization. So for example, pie chart, we have a whole divided up into percentages or parts. If we take a whole class, that's the whole pie or the whole pizza pie. Then we say that, 20% of them, that 20% slice have blonde hair, 40% have dark hair. So something like that. And together the parts make up the whole. When we have a flow chart, we're looking at order and sequence. So kind of step one, if this goes correctly, step two, otherwise step 2A, or, kind of one of those charts that are like, oh, should I buy new sandals for the summer? Well, do you already have sandals? Yes. Then the flow chart stops. Okay. If you don't, then this one. Or it can be, directions of how to use something. So we have 1, 2, and then the next step. The important thing with flowcharts is its order and sequence. So you don't do step 6 before step 1. No. Genre, reviewing different genres. Is a fable fiction or nonfiction? Do you know? So a fable is fiction, it's imaginary. So a fable is kind of usually has animals in it, kind of a story with a message, very fantastical, like the tortoise and the hare racing, for example, the message that you can go slowly and still win. So I guess that's a good metaphor for our 6-week study plan, or even better metaphor if you start even earlier. But fable is a type of fiction because it's not true. Of course, the tortoise and hare did not race. Maybe on YouTube someone made someone race, but not this whole story. The whole story is imaginary. And then we have formal, informal language. So this is part of our grab bag of topics. So this is part of our grab bag mix of week 6 topics, our small topics. Because for a lot of students, especially if you grew up with English as your first language, for others it might not be as easy. It's pretty natural to know when something sounds formal or informal. So let's test with this phrase. Don't sweat the small stuff. Do you think that's formal language that we would use in a government proclamation or in a legal document written by a judge or in a request for citizenship? No. Why not? Because we have the word stuff is kind of a slang word. Sweat is also slang. Sweat, not just meaning sweat, but sweat meaning worry about. And then we have the word don't, which is a contraction. A more formal document might say, do not forget to provide your birth certificate, something like that. So this one is informal. All right, so we're actually on to our last practice test before the real thing. So we're going to write down all the things we normally write down, and then we're going to write down our progress. So hopefully by now you see some progress. This might be useful, this last practice test, when you decide those 2 most challenging topics. Those you could say, oh, I need to go back to my materials from week 2 because that was a really challenging part for me. So I'm going to review that again. But at this point, you should be comfortable with a lot more topics. Now we are 2 days before the test. So what are we going to do 2 days before the test? First, read through your notebook, focusing on spellings, prefixes, suffixes, and concepts that still challenge you. So one of my most important suggestions for studying, don't just sit reading line by line in your notebook. That's a waste of your time. Read the things that you don't know. You can even get a highlighter out or highlight your document, things that you don't know. If you're really comfortable now and you know pre means before, of course, premiere, preview, pre-game show, you know that. Even if it was in your notebook because you didn't know it week 1, if you know it now, don't bother reviewing it. Review the things you do not know. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Next, review the structure and timing of the ELU section. There will be 37 questions in 37 minutes. This is the shortest exam on the TEAS. And remember, all the TEAS practice tests in the TEAS 7 online course are timed. So if you take some of our practice tests, we have the timing so you can feel confident about being able to finish and answer the questions in enough time. Timing, of course, is really important. You have to be aware of your own, strengths and weaknesses when it comes to timing. Are you someone who kind of gets a little bit off track and you get lost and you have to catch up? That could be something to pay attention to because you want to take the time to read the questions carefully. 3, prepare your strategy, reading questions carefully, as I just said, eliminating answers you know are wrong, getting down to 50-50 to take your best guess on challenging questions. So I would say You have to keep your calm in the test. That's why practice tests leading up to the day really help, because you've done it. It almost becomes like a boring routine. You're like, oh, another test. But it's actually good if it's boring rather than stressful. And if you see a question you don't immediately know the right answer, oh yeah, it's B. Don't worry. Try to eliminate the wrong answers. Get down to think of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You can't phone a friend, unfortunately, but you can get down to 50-50 to take your best guess. So, you have to take a guess. If you can eliminate one answer, even that you think is wrong, is wrong, hopefully, that helps you. You're not just randomly guessing. You're getting closer to the answer. So that's important. And this is a very happy day now. We're one day before the test. So I have a theory, and this is actually what my mother taught me, and it's worked for me really well, that you don't study, you don't even look at any materials the day before the test. So why? Well, first of all, you followed our amazing study plan and you're prepared. You've spent these 6 weeks preparing. You've worked so hard. You deserve a day of rest. The other reason, if you start looking at things the day before the test, if you suddenly find a word you don't know or a concept you realize you don't understand, one day is really too late to learn it, to memorize it, to fully master it. But it is enough time to start getting into your brain that it's something, to be nervous about. So you don't really have enough time to learn something new, but you do have enough time to get anxious about something new. So don't get anxious. Don't look at anything. You've studied for 6 weeks. You've taken practice tests. You've worked really hard. You're prepared. The most important thing at this point, I think, is really to get into a mindset of being calm. So do something else to take your mind off the test. So you can go for a bike ride, you can watch a movie, you can hang out with your family and friends, you could take a bath, you could, do anything relaxing. Definitely make sure you get enough sleep and you're eating well and you're taking care of yourself, because you deserve it. You've worked hard and you deserve to be in the best shape possible when you take the test. So this is really, really important, that if you've studied all the way up to this point, you don't need to study before the test. That's my advice. It's worked for me. Some people have different approaches. So of course you have to do what works for you. But we all have different thoughts about that. So thank you so much for following along with this and the study guide. Please check out the links below. We have some great resources for you. We have this study guide in PDF when you sign up to take the free practice test. And of course, you can get started with this whole 6-week study plan. And you can get started with that as well in the link below. And do let us know. As I said, we really listen to your comments, and it's really great when you tell us exactly what you need. So if you need an even more detailed study plan, if you need a study plan of a different length, if you need something else from us in video format, we'd love to help you out. So thanks so much, and see you on the next video.